Thank you, Bryn. You're so good. So Lucy, want to take us through the agenda?
Yes. So I'm so sorry here. I'm trying to get my messages off of my screen. I was looking at the chat and then all right. Well, welcome. Good morning. We are really excited to have you here, as I mentioned earlier, as we opened up this learning series, that this is our end of the summer rural county learning series that we are so excited to offer and bring rural counties together to be able to provide a peer learning opportunity. So for today's agenda, we are actually doing a series. If you remember, if you recall, if you were with us back in May of this year, just 3 months ago, we started our series of youth engagement and how we can support our youth in the areas of thriving in our communities, in our prevention planning efforts. And this is actually part two, in which we wanted to hear about what the youth's perspective is, their experience, and any lessons or advice that they would share with us as providers that actually would allow us to learn more about how to connect with them and how to ensure that we create systems that are youth friendly and not creating any barriers. So today we're actually going to be looking at, as you see on the screen, we're going to be working on sharing with you how to increase your exposure to peers, to learn from each other. Our goal is that you participate, that you ask questions. This series is for you. So if we are going too fast or if there's something you don't understand, please raise your hand or use the chat box function. We're monitoring and we want to make sure we can respond to you. We also want to hear from you. This is a learning cohort for a reason. This is not because we are the experts. We are coordinating other partners to be able to share their expertise, but you also have gifts, you have knowledge, you have experience, you have stories that can help our network really develop a stronger community, a sense of how to develop our prevention planning efforts in our county. So we want to hear and we want to learn from you successful strategies or even lessons learned. It doesn't have to be always successful strategies, especially because when it comes to the voice of our youth, we need to really focus on how can we increase that opportunity for our youth. And then overall, we want to make sure we can work together to develop a plan to engage youth in the process of developing our county prevention plan. Next slide. So who are we? We are strategy technical assistants. And if this is your first time here, welcome. We're really excited to have you here. We provide rural county learning exchanges. What that basically means is that we are funded by the Office of Child Abuse Prevention in an effort for us to provide support to the multiple counties in the state of California on how to develop a prevention plan. And one of the areas that we supplement is bringing counties like yours that are rural to come together and talk about elements or areas, topics that you feel are maybe not clearly delineated in maybe some of the work you're doing, maybe not clear direction, sometimes from funders, the state. So we want to bring you together. We want to bring speakers, but we only do this operating through this grant, and we do it based on what is important to you. And this, Barbara and myself, we'll have Barbara introduce herself here shortly, and I'll share a little bit more about me. We are from rural counties, and we understand what it is to provide services in our counties. We are dynamic in what we do. We have multiple hats, but we also know that we have limited resources. So this is an opportunity to bring you together. So hopefully today you can engage and you can learn and you can participate as well with that.
So first off, I hope there's not a lot of background noise from my, the people behind me are doing some yard work. It should be over soon. So forgive me if you can hear the lawnmower. So what's our focus for today? So as Lucy said, this is part two of a two-part series on youth engagement. And our idea for today was we were going to bring youth to the table so you could hear directly from youth about what motivates them to participate in some of these projects, how it helps them, what they need, and what they need from us as service providers. But I had about 4 youth that were interested in participating, and unfortunately, they were not able to make it today. So one of the things that one of our themes for today is going to be flexibility. So as we planned this event, we had a plan A and a plan B and a plan C. All good plans, but I do want to share with you that unfortunately we won't have direct youth voice today at our table, but we are going to hear, and you'll learn more about our wonderful panelists from Calaveras County who work directly with youth and are able to channel the youth voice. Because one of the things that we learned in putting this together was it's just incredibly intimidating for youth to participate in these events. And we often forget about how hard it is for us as service professionals to participate on Zoom and have our face in a box and talk to a screen. So one of the things that we learned was that it is very, very intimidating. We also learned that youth have a lot of conflicting priorities, and it probably wasn't a good idea to host a youth voice engagement webinar. For some youth, it's their first or second week of school. So we learned that as well, how important it is to plan around events like the beginning of school. And then the other thing that we learned is, we need to build trust. So even though I was able to outreach to some youth whose names I received, but from other folks that, hopefully have good relationships, I myself don't have that relationship with the individual person. So, that's why I love this quote. This quote is, "The road to trust is respect." And this quote came from Junius Williams, who, he's sort of our spiritual guider in community engagement. And we'll talk a little bit more about a webinar that he did on the community engagement toolkit, which we're going to share pieces today. But I think it's just really important to think about youth engagement as a process, and again, being very, very flexible. So and to build that road, respect, and then trust, which is so important for all of the programs that we do. So that's our focus for today. So we'll be hearing not firsthand, but secondhand from youth, and hopefully, again, we'll hear from you about your challenges and your questions. It's a small group, 27 folks. So we really, really hope that we'll have an interactive program today. And
Barbara,
then, go ahead.
Barbara,
Sorry.
there was a question for you on this last slide.
Oh, okay.
Can you repeat the quote and who the quote is from?
Oh, sure. I'm going to go back because I can't remember anything. So the quote, I can't go back now, of course. There we go. So the quote is, "The road to trust is respect." And it came from Junius Williams, and Junius Williams works for the Collective Impact Forum. And for folks that registered early on, we shared the community engagement toolkit with you via email. We'll share it again, the link today, as well as post the learning exchange, I'll share again. But Junius did an excellent webinar for us where he talked about, and he wasn't speaking specifically to youth engagement. He was talking about community engagement, just getting that voice, whether it be parents, youth, etc. So it's Junius Williams, and we think the world of him.
And we have worked with him on webinars in the past, which
Yes.
you can watch on the Strategies TA YouTube channel, which I just dropped in the chat.
Thank you so much, Bryn. And since we're now going to meet the team, so I'm Barb DeGraff. I work with primarily rural counties, primarily in the Mountain Valley region of California. And I live in South Lake Tahoe. I live on the lands of the Washoe tribe. Beautiful, beautiful South Lake Tahoe. And this week, last year, we were watching the Caldor fire as it marched up Route 50 toward our town. And, we were smoked in and we could barely breathe. We had 700 parts per million air quality, which is beyond hazardous. And this year, we are so happy and thrilled and feel so fortunate. It's beautiful, sunny, blue skies. And so we always put that in perspective whenever we look outside our houses today. So I'm Barb DeGraff, and then Bryn, you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, all. Sorry, I am camera off this morning, but my name is Bryn Pascal. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am living on Nisenan and Miwok land. I am the data specialist for Strategies Technical Assistance, and today I am producing this webinar. So if you have any technical difficulties or questions, you can send me a chat and I will help work you through those. And I am so glad to be here with all of you today.
We're glad to have you.
And good morning. I'm Lucy Hernandez, and I am also a strategies technical assistant consultant. And I focus on primarily in Northern California from Sacramento up to the Oregon border. And I provide technical assistance and support and training for counties that are working on their prevention plan, and also support them on collective community engagement efforts. So very happy to serve. And I live in Glenn County, a rural county next to Butte County, which is Chico area. And I come from the Nomalaki land. So thank you for being here. So now we want to hear from you. We want to know who's here with us. So we would like to ask to take a moment. Bryn will be placing a link in the chat box for you to identify what land you're coming from today. Either you live or you work. If you could please introduce yourself, your name, your title, your agency, and what land you're coming and you're joining us from. And also, if you want to share with us something fun that you did this summer. We were just starting to have that conversation this morning, but if you're just joining, please feel free, anything fun that you did, even if it means you stayed at home with your children and you just had a movie night, that is fun. So it doesn't have to mean vacation. So something that was fun and meaningful to you, especially for many of you, maybe your children are going to school for the first time, maybe they're going to college for the first time, whatever that may be. We know how precious these summers are when our children are about to take a big step. So feel free to take a moment and share with us.
Hi, Sarah. I see Sarah from Alpine County. They had their own problem last year with the Tamarack fire. So we're,
Oh my goodness.
and Victoria
Yes.
from CFRA. Melissa, one of our speakers. Sarah, and the flood this year. That's right. You had the flash flooding. Yes, with the rains. With the good comes the floods, right? Elizabeth Reyes. Oh, she's been transitioning. Oh, Madeira. Nice. Welcome. Kathy LeBlanc. Maydew Nisanen. Hi, Donna, Amador County, and Christina, one of our presenters. Brianna, also Alpine.
And our presenters were affected by the Electra fire and the Oak fire. Is that correct? For my Calaveras County.
I don't know. Did they? I don't remember.
No.
Seems to be Yuba County. I don't know what land that is. We can. Butte County. Oh, nice. Public health nurse. Wonderful.
County is here. Angelica, welcome.
Butte. Yay. Electra fire affected Amador. Yes, that was.
Okay.
Snow Elementary Coordinator, Family Resource, Napa County. Nice. Micaela Muro, Inyo. Yay, Inyo. 2 Inyo folks. Riverside. Great. Wonderful. All right, we'll keep putting them in and we'll be sharing. Everybody can read where you're from. We'll move on to the next slide.
Right.
Victoria Hartman is going to talk to us about a very, very important resource, child tax credit.
Yes. Well, thank you all so much for having me here today. I just wanted to share a brief resource about the child tax credit that could benefit many families across the state. And so a little bit about me. I am the program manager for the California Family Resource Association at the CAP Center. So I work with Bryn and Barb here at the CAP Center. And I manage a statewide network of family resource centers and FRC networks, and we typically provide advocacy and policy for our family resource centers across the state, as well as networking opportunities and grant opportunities. So one of the grants that we have through the David and Lucille Packard Foundation is the Child Tax Credit Outreach Campaign grant. So the goal of that specific grant is to provide outreach, share information, and support families with accessing the child tax credit. And so we had a couple of grantees that did really great work on this, but there is still time to file for the child tax credit this year. Even though, tax season is kind of over, we still are able to enroll families into the child tax credit, so long as it's before mid-November. And so I'm sure many of you, if not all of you, or maybe some of you, are familiar with the child tax credit. What it basically is that it's a tax benefit that helps families with the costs of raising children. And it's existed for about 2 years, but it was significantly expanded in 2021. And this year, families will be able to get up to $3,600 per child under 6 years old and $3,000 per child ages 6 to 17, regardless of how many children they have. And so this is a great resource that families are entitled to, but many times they kind of run into barriers to accessing it. Some folks have never filed for taxes. And so even for myself, filing for taxes seems a little bit stressful. So that can definitely be one of the barriers. Other folks are hesitant to share their information with the government. Language barriers. There's a lot of rationale or reasons as to why people don't access this child tax credit. And so there's a lot of resources and information out there around communications for how to support families with getting enrolled in child tax credit. I'll put a couple links in the chat here. There you can go and learn more information about it. But please, parents really have a social security number. They can have an ITIN, just the child needs to have a social security number. Like I said, they just need to enroll before November, mid-November. And they can do they can file their full taxes if they'd like to, or they can just file specifically for the child tax credit, which is kind of pretty quickly. And there have been some resources like getctc.org that make it really easy to be able to complete it. There's even videos out there that have like step-by-step process on how to complete it. So what we have here is one of the flyers, and there is an editable version if you're interested in getting an editable version for your organization, or if you know of organizations that would be interested. We have them in many different languages, so you can certainly reach out to me. I'll put my email in the chat as well, so I can get you this as well. And then another update is at the end of the month on August 30th, there will be a navigator training for child tax credit, and that'll be at 11 a.m. And I'll put the Zoom link in the chat. And that is through the Coalition on Human Needs and the Partnership for America's Children. So this is a great resource for families. So, if you know of families or organizations that could really benefit from learning more about this and get some access to maybe like a media kit, or just kind of attend a training to learn how to address some of those barriers and support families with filing, I would definitely recommend going to this upcoming child tax credit navigator training. I've attended the training, and they really address, like, you don't have to be a tax expert, which can feel a little bit overwhelming. You don't have to be a tax expert to be able to help families with this. There's a lot of resources out there that'll really support families. It's just kind of getting them the access, providing them with the information, and supporting them in enrolling, and kind of breaking down some of those barriers. So I will leave a couple of links in the chat.
Right.
So this first one here is where families can go and complete a simplified tax return at childtaxcredit.org. They can also do it through getctc.org. And then there's also free tax prep help through VITA. Here, let me put this in the chat.
And I'll also send these resources out in my post rural learning exchange email to
That would
folks,
be great.
along with a copy of the flyer.
Perfect.
And this is different than the child care tax credit, which is a permanent tax credit. This is one that came about due to COVID, basically, as a part of the CARES Act. So it does expire. There were efforts to try to make it permanent, but I don't think those were successful, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's why we have kind of this final push for sure to get people enrolled.
Great.
Victoria, I know that several of our providers, partners here also, they operate or partner with family resource centers. So if they would like to connect with you for some further support, how can they get a hold of you, and what services can they connect with you for to obtain from you?
Yeah, so I'll put my email address on here. So definitely if you are needing support with outreach materials, we have those in multiple languages. Like I said, we have an editable version of this flyer here. I'm not a child tax credit expert by any means, but I definitely know where to point you in the right direction. So if you're needing training, we can get you access to some of the available training that's coming up. If you are looking for information about where to find the specific recordings on different webinars that have happened. There's been some webinars around how to do outreach within schools for child tax credit and how to break down some of these barriers. And then we've also been working in partnership with Lightbox Collaborative. They've just been absolutely amazing in their communications information. And so they have a really big toolkit that has all sorts of information, FAQs, talking points, how to have this kind of conversation with families about the child tax credit. So I can definitely point you in the direction of the resources that you all might be needing.
Great. Thank you so much, Victoria.
Of course.
It's a great resource for families.
Definitely.
All right, I'm going to move on.
Okay.
Oh, that's page 2 of the flyer, FYI,
Yep.
because it has a nice QR code as well, which is really cool. All right.
Yep.
And then I just wanted to share with folks this Caltrin website. If you're not already receiving information about the trainings available through Caltrin, they're all free, they're all virtual, but in addition to a host of trainings that they have on trauma-informed care, on protective factors, on all sorts of topic areas, they have a whole series on leadership within your organization to build leaders' capacity. They also are a repository for all things comprehensive prevention planning. So if you go to the caltrin.org website, you'll see at the top this link, comprehensive prevention planning support. So for all of your prevention planning needs are in one place. There's a learning series that they're currently sharing with the state of California, all free again. Every month they have a new topic area and everything's recorded. So if you can't make the actual webinar, you can watch it later, which I would highly recommend, the Comprehensive Prevention Planning Leaders Learning Series. There's also the Comprehensive Prevention Planning resource page, which has everything around prevention planning. It has all the all-county letters, funding sources, links to different places, and it's excellent. And then here on the far right of the screen is the Reimagining Prevention series, which was the precursor to all these other series that they're doing. And that really is like what I call Prevention 101. So it has a lot of excellent webinars, including Junius Williams' webinar on community engagement. So I look at like the reimagining prevention as the basics of prevention. So I would highly recommend you go to their website, make sure you're on their newsletter list. They send out at least monthly, but also take a gander, walk about this comprehensive prevention planning support area, and you'll find lots and lots of wonderful resources. So just wanted to make sure everybody's aware of that. And then Lucy, you want to talk a little bit about the changes ahead?
Yeah, so as we mentioned earlier, our goal has been to bring rural county partners together to focus on specific topics of interest in areas of support that you're needing. Because as we know, rural counties have a specific need versus maybe urban cities, counties that have a lot more resources. So one of the things, our goals and strategies is to initiate the conversation. And we just want to say that we have rolled out this project, and this will be our last session together as a cohort. We obviously knew we wanted to start these to get you connected to others, so we hope that you have made connections. But great things are coming. We are going to have you as a rural county still have a voice and participate. We're going to be moving more towards learning sessions and webinars that will be geared statewide, but we definitely want to make sure that if there's specific topics of interest that rural counties are being impacted with, please let us know. We will be creating these learning series around multiple topics and areas. So it won't be specific to rural counties. So this is the change that we're trying to share. It'll be more generalized for all counties, but definitely want to say thank you for being part of this journey. This cohort has been phenomenal. I think that this is actually our last session, but also I think that the lowest in attendance. We have always had over 100 plus attendees register, and we've had more than 50% of those attendees join us. So some of you, I've seen your names since our first session. So we just want to say we will be integrating some other strategies into the work we're going to do. We're going to create learning sessions, webinars. We're also going to be hosting office hours. So that's something different. And what that means is that if your county is working on a prevention plan and you currently are struggling or have questions on something that you're not sure about how to lead the effort in your county, give us a call. We will be having office hours just like a professor would, to be able to help you go through those areas. And remember, our role is to provide technical assistance. So if your county is currently working on the prevention plan and you're not connected to us, please do. We do have a team of consultants here to help you with experience. We all have been, we work in the field, and now we focus on consulting to support you in your efforts. So more to come. Information will be coming. So please make sure you sign up for our newsletter, our updates out of our strategies website. And you definitely will be receiving additional information of our upcoming webinars that will be definitely also opportunity to seek your input on what is important to you.
And I just want to also share that at the end, we'll put a link to our evaluation. And in today's evaluation, we just ask if you have any thoughts about how we can best integrate the kind of special challenges and needs of rural areas into future webinars and future office hours. Let us know. Like if you have ideas and thoughts, we want to hear from you. And if you don't think of anything now, but you think of something later, feel free to email Lucy or myself. We'd love to hear from you. All right.
Okay, so one of the resources that we shared with you early on in our cohort sessions was the community engagement toolkit. So if you do not have this toolkit, we have the link that is also at the screen, but we'll also post this in the chat box. Highly recommend that you download it. And this toolkit is geared to provide you and your county some best practices on how to really gather input, provide a forum, a platform for our residents, our clients, our families, our community members, our youth to have a voice at the table. And today's session is primarily for us to ask really, why is youth engagement important? And I really would like to ask you as an attendee today, please tell us, why do you think youth engagement is important? Why is the youth's voice important to the work we do? Feel free to submit your input in the chat box and share with us, why do you think youth engagement is important in the work we do?
And I think I'll go to the next slide as well, if that's okay, because this is also, from Junius Williams. I just want to make sure I always mention, his webinars are so great, but these are his, ideas of like reasons why, engaging the community, but in our case, youth is so important. So we were hoping that you could share with us, either chat it or, raise your hand or just unmute yourself. What have you had any experience in any of these areas of really looking at why youth engagement is important? I have some ideas myself, but we'd love to hear from you all. Looking at these are 5 areas, understanding systemic community challenges, co-creating solutions together, verifying the direction, making sure we're going in the right direction. I saw some, folks that work in youth tobacco outreach and things like that. How do we know if we're reaching the people that we want to reach, if our message is getting out there? So we want to expand the reach of our strategies, build our community capacity for change. So does anybody have any thoughts or ideas where this has worked in your community, or you've seen engaging youth contributing to some results? So Donna shared, youth are our future leaders. Listen to the youth. Look who the world has listened to youth advocates. Yes, they have a pulse on what's going on with the youth. Yes, youth, absolutely, Donna. And they have a stake, right, in the future. I'm on the other end of youth. So yeah, the youth have a stake in their future. Michaela says, help them gain skills and tools. Let's see, let me open that up a little bit so I can see it. So Michaela, help them gain skills and tools for growth and experience. And then youth engagement, Elizabeth says, is important. It is time in life when a person is discovering who they are and also where they need the most support. Although it is never too late to change things for oneself, it is a perfect time to work on yourself, having the highest quality of life by breaking cycles and building a strong foundation. They can then build a strong community as they grow. Wow. So Christian says high school students presented to the Jackson City Council, and it definitely persuaded the council to consider a policy change. That's a great example. Excellent. Excellent. I'd be curious, Christian, did they consider it or did they actually do it? Or are they still in the consideration phase? Feel free to unmute yourself if you want. That's a great example.
Oh, sure. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
This was back in 2015, 2016. Yeah. And I think just hearing the personal stories from the youth and why it was important, that this was the future that they wanted. They were, going to be adults soon. And many of them were already 18, seniors in high school. And yeah, so I think it definitely was the, persuading factor.
Right. So they actually did make it smoke free.
They did, yes.
Yeah, right. That's great.
Yeah, it was great.
That is excellent. That's a great example. And then Kathy shared, youth voices are imperative. It's our job to guide them, to understand. It's going too fast for me, unfortunately. I'm a little slow. They're building their futures by saying what's important about, or by being silent. Choices, exactly. And isn't that the same? Yes, for us as well.
And Donna shared, absolutely. I can't tell you how many times I have had youth come back and thank me for the opportunities that I gave them through community service clubs. It helped them get into colleges, become advocates, get a job, etc., etc.
Yep, that's great. That is wonderful. Okay, those are great examples. Thank you. So we just want to make sure that folks realize, one of the other pieces that I just think so important, and it comes up a lot in the meetings that we host for our prevention planning. A lot of times when we're at the table with each other as professionals, we tend to, we're hesitant to criticize each other, and sometimes our discussions, we don't really want to challenge each other because we have to work together and we want to maintain very good relationships. And sometimes I feel when we bring youth voice to the table as well as parent voice to the table, they are able to really share truly what it is like to try to access services in our community. And again, people are more open to listening to that youth voice. So that's one of the reasons why I think having that the voice engaged in our comprehensive prevention planning efforts as we try to develop services is so important. Youth can be more honest and open, and we can encourage that. And I think it just helps us all to have a more like a real discussion, a real authentic discussion about what it's truly like to access services in our communities. All right, well, thank you for that. So we wanted to talk a little bit about where are you right now on the youth engagement spectrum. And this chart is right out of the Community Engagement Toolkit. And so we're going to, well, first we'll go through these real quick, and then Bryn's going to launch a couple of polls. So the first poll we're going to ask you, where are you now on the youth engagement spectrum? And again, this is talking community engagement generally, but we're thinking about youth engagement. So are you just informing youth about what you're doing? So you have fact sheets, you have newsletters, but you're basically just saying, this is what we're doing. You're informing the youth. Are you consulting with youth? Are you asking for feedback? Are you saying, what are some alternatives? Telling the youth that, you'll keep them informed, you're going to listen to their feedback, and then you're going to share how you've addressed their concerns. This could be, how do you get this engagement? Surveys, focus groups, community meetings and forums. Think of like parent cafes and such. Are you involving in decision making? So you can see as we move on this spectrum, right, we get more and more in depth into the kind of empowerment area. So are you actually involving folks? Are you working together with the youth, and you're saying you want to hear and make sure that their concerns are included in all the programs that you're developing? And we want to make sure your feedback is actually reflected in what we do. And how do you get that kind of involvement? You have, community organizations, you have leadership development, you have workshops where people come in and you're actually developing programs together. And then you have collaborating, you enable community members to participate in every aspect of planning and decision making. The community members actively produce outcomes, you co-produce, co-create solutions, you work in partnership, and this looks like advisory boards, seats on governing boards, engaging in funding partners. And then the most involved would be empowering. So you're giving the community member, the youth in this case, sole decision-making authority over new programs and services that then lead to solutions.
Well, you can if you want. I didn't get that.
Oh, Kathy, I think you need to mute yourself. I'm sorry. We'll support your, we say as the professionals that we will support your decisions as the youth to implement solutions. And this is full governance and leadership and partnership. So Bryn, if you'd be kind enough to launch the first poll. So thinking about that, where are you on the youth engagement spectrum? Are you informing, consulting? Ooh, look at that. Keep voting. We have less than half folks participating, so we'll take a little bit of time. And ooh, up to 70%. Keep voting.
And if for some reason you can't participate in the poll, you are more than welcome to drop your answer in the chat.
Feel free to chat.
But we'll give it, 30 more seconds.
Doing pretty good. It's 80%. That's pretty good, I'd say.
All right, it's kind of dropped off participation wise, so we will end the poll.
So I'm really impressed with where folks are at. So we've got nice group of folks that are on the involving and collaborating end, which is really great. That is fantastic. So I'm very impressed with that. And then, I usually you see where folks are is on the informing and consulting end. So, and then people want to move toward the involving and collaborating. So really, really great. So we should have some good discussion about, what you're doing to involve, collaborate, and then for that that person that's empowering, I want to hear from them. So let's go to the second poll, which is going to be, where do you want to be? What's your goal? And it doesn't have to be empowering, it's just thinking about, where would you really like to get if you could, envision where you want to be. Because I don't know how many actual examples in real life I've seen of empowerment. So about half, a little bit more than half, have voted. And maybe you're happy where you are, which is fine as well. All right.
We'll give it 10 more
We have
seconds.
about 70% of folks voting. All right. All right, pretty good.
All right, and I am closing the poll now.
Go, Bryn, go. So it looks like, which is great, majority of folks want to get to that empowering stage, which thinking about what you need to do to get there, particularly in youth engagement, right? And the kind of trust and authentic discussion you're going to need to engage in with youth in order to get there. It's work, but worth it in the end, because I really do believe that you end up with a better product. And then we have almost equal involving and collaborating, and the one person who's comfortable with informing folks. So that's where we're at. So as we now hear from our expert panel, including starting with Lucy, we're going to think about, how do we move along that community engagement spectrum? How do we get to where we want to go? So I think, Lucy, you're up.
Thank you, Barbara.
And I've
So
got to get to the next slide. Sorry.
I wanted to share with the group. So just to give you some perspective, I served as the assistant director for Glenn County Health and Human Services for the Community Action Department. And in the time frame of working in Glenn County for 14 years, I felt very blessed to run the foster youth programs under Community Action. The foster youth program that I'm going to share with you is during the period of 2000 and 2011. So I just want to be very clear, because currently Community Action does not have this contract. It is actually now with Office of Education in Glenn County. But what I wanted to share with you is the story of resilience. In Glenn County, we are a very small county, 26,000 in population in this time frame. And we as Community Action had the independent living program contract, along with other contracts from child welfare. And what we basically found is that the independent living program, the ILP program, was very prescribed on what we needed to do is provide life skills for youth. But the thing is that we did not want to just provide life skills that we thought were important. We wanted to hear from our youth. And what we found was that when we actually turned it around into giving the youth the power to share with us, many of them did not want to be there. Many of them were forced to be there, and social workers were telling them, you have to go, and they did not want to go. Their group homes or foster parents would make them. And we basically said, hey, we want this to be something that you feel you're taking, something that makes sense to you. And also we became vulnerable, and we basically told them, we are not the experts in what you need. And we became very humble in the sense that we need you. to lead this effort because you know what's important to you and you are creating a change that will help many youth that may not have a voice. And from this, what we found is our youth basically helped us create our independent living skills classes, and we had them actually co-present, facilitate these classes with us, and we would give them a stipend. And what we started to see is the leadership emerge among many of these youth. And what we found is we realized that we had an opportunity to create a chapter, which is a California Youth Connection chapter. And if you're not familiar with CYC, highly encourage you to check them out. They are basically a body of an entity that supports statewide foster youth in building their leadership skills to be able to make policy changes at the local level, at the regional level, at the state level, and it is very empowering. And what they basically said to us is they wanted to make changes, but they felt like they weren't being heard. And so we created the CYC chapter, and we basically had myself became a mentor. We had additional foster parents and other staff that became mentors. And we had former foster youth that actually became mentors, which they wanted to give back. And what we found is this program really started to generate change. And it was really the consistency. But I think that really what happened here was being humble. And what we found is that outside of our foster youth that were referred to our program, we started to generate interest by the community. And what we found was we had the non-needy parents, or you have grandparents raising their grandchildren, and we basically could not take them into our program because they did not fit the criteria of being a foster youth. So what we did is we at that point also had family resource centers. And what we did is we started to create a program that our family resource center located in Orland would actually provide the grandparents as parents. We created support groups for the grandparents. We started to create life skill classes for youth that were with the non-needy parents. And when we call the non-needy parents, these are the parents that are receiving cash assistance, but they're not only for the child, but not for themselves. And so, as you know, if you have a generational gap in raising a child, the grandparents felt at that point very disconnected on what their youth needed. And this is, I'm going to date myself here, but this is the time where CalWorks, we started to have the clocks, where you have a limited was a 2-year, the welfare reform went into 2-year, then it expanded to 5 years. This is when a lot of the parents were no longer receiving cash assistance for themselves. So we started to see a shift where parents were leaving their children with their parents, which is the grandparents. So you started to see a systemic change. And what we found in a rural community, even though we did not have a lot of resources, what we did have is a lot of heart, in the sense that our family resource centers, we basically stepped up to create programs that will support a gap community. And we were very blessed to be able to seek additional funds from OCAP, and I also requested child welfare dollars so that we can do prevention work, because these are youth that are going to end up in the system if we don't do something. Respite care for grandparents, work with child care research and referral to seeking respite hours that child welfare contracted to the Blaine County Office of Education Child Care Research and Referral for respite care. And those were the kind of partnerships that we really started to develop. Why? Because we were hearing the needs, and the youth that were actually wanting to connect with other youth, that was so critical. So we actually started to integrate foster youth and youth that were not in foster care by having basketball tournaments with the police department. We started to have fundraisers. We actually would have relays at the park. And what we started to do is create a community. And that is the kind of thing that I think you find the beauty of us in rural counties, is that we're not as complicated maybe as urban cities, where we have 5 or 6 partners that have all the different contracts, but we're the one stop. And I think that's the beauty of it. So if you do have a family resource center, I just commend my family resource centers. my favorite projects. I always been, saying that if I can focus on supporting family resource centers, that there's so much opportunity there. And the county cannot do all this work. That's why we rely on these neutral partners. So with that, I wanted to share with you the story of Glenn County, and then obviously the contract, I left Glenn County and the contract moved over to Office of Ed, which they're doing a phenomenal job as well currently. And they're working on independent living skill programs. CYC continues. And it's just, once again, I'm just blessed that many of these youth taught me so many stories. And I think we need to learn to be able to listen and learn from the youth. They have so many elements to teach us that I think that if we can just listen and encourage them to participate, if they feel comfortable, I think that is the one thing that I would like to share with you, is that we can be consistent. We may have 2 or 3 hats, and that is where youth get to know who Lucy is, or who Melissa is, or who Barbara is, because you are the IOP coordinator, but you're also the, supervised visitation driver. You're also, helping with Medi-Cal and getting their, Medi-Cal card in place, or CalFresh. So we have so many hats that I think youth appreciate that consistency, that which may not be there sometimes when their social worker may not be, unfortunately, cannot maybe be the same social worker all the time. So that's our story in Glenn County. Very blessed. And I'm going to go ahead and now share with you an opportunity to hear about 2 phenomenal team members that are here, our panel members. So I want to share with you Melissa Harvey and Christina Yart. Melissa Harvey has been newly promoted. She is the manager of Foster Youth Services Coordination Program. She is with the Calaveras County Office of Education. And we have Christina, who is the Calaveras County Independent Living Program Foster Youth Specialist, also with the Office of Education. And both of them have phenomenal opportunities to share with you how they actually worked on developing a youth advisory council. So let's hear from them, and then we will open it up to questions, and we're going to go deeper into some questions that will support you as well. Thank you, Melissa and Christina.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Lucy. I just want to echo so much of what you said. I feel like in so many ways, you also told the story of Calaveras County as well. You hit on a lot of the points that we talk about daily when we're developing programs. Just for a little background for everybody on the call, just like Lucy was mentioning, we in Calaveras County wear lots of different hats. So we're here at the Calaveras County Office of Education with the Foster Youth Services Coordinating Program. But we also have the contract for our independent living program that gives services to current and former foster youth. We also have our homeless education program. And in addition to that, under our umbrella, we have a program called Adventures in Mentoring, which is exactly what Lucy was describing. This is something that's unique to our county. We have married our independent living program and our Adventures in Mentoring program to serve transition-aged youth throughout Calaveras County. And what's really unique about this is when you become a hub and a center for youth, just as Lucy mentioned, you start to get other community members who say, I have a kid and they would be perfect for your program, but they do not meet your qualifications. So we're going to talk about a little bit more specifically about how we engage in youth, but part of that, I think, is in our rural communities getting creative about how can we engage in our community, how can we use multiple different funding sources to make what's best for our community, what our community members say they need, what our youth say they need. So often that's talking to folks like Lucy and Barbara and saying, okay, we have this amazing idea. What can we do? Or we're doing this on the side. Do you know of ways we can make this a structure and a reality? So we have these 2 programs together. They serve current and former foster youth in the ILP program, 16 to 21, but we also have the discretion to serve any youth in our county who would like to learn transition aged youth skills of how to be an adult. Because this is a mentoring program, it's a nonprofit agency that has funding from lots of different areas and contracts from lots of different places. And if you're interested, we can talk after about the background of that. But this has been really essential and crucial to making our programs work in Calaveras. Christina and I work very closely together. We worked very closely to develop this program. And when we created our youth advisory board, we created it in mind that we want to make it specific, but we also want to make it broad enough that we can have many different youth engage. For us, that's on the topic of all those programs that I mentioned earlier, right? Foster youth, anything related to that in our county, education, homeless or housing insecurity in our county, mentoring, all of these things are kind of our hub. So any youth, if they have a stake in that, that's very broad. It allows us to kind of cast our net broadly when we're setting this up and choose youth who we've been talking to, we have relationship, and kind of dive in. So that's our kind of program background. And then I'll pass it over to Christina to talk just a little bit about how we built the relationships with youth to get to a point where we actually had youth participating in our advisory board.
Thanks, Melissa. Full disclosure, we are 6 months into our youth advisory board. This is our first term, so we are learning as we go. Our youth advisory board members are teaching us what works best for them, and we are taking that and running with it. So like Melissa said, we really wanted to create a group of students that was our kind of little go-to. You know, we kept getting, well, what do your kids think? Well, do you have youth voice? And we thought, well, we need a little core group of kids that we can do that with. So we were very intentional about choosing students that we had established relationships with already, students that were engaged in our program, whether that was through our independent living skills program, through our group mentoring program, kids that already trusted us, and that we could approach and say, here's what we're thinking. We think that you have the skills to do this. We're going to walk you through this. Will you walk through this with us? We created an invitation. We made, I'll hold it up so you guys can see it, but can you see it? Probably not. It was we did it on county office letterhead. We signed it. It's a very official looking invitation. We had some requirements for our youth advisory board. Some of our requirements were that they had to be actively participating in one of our programs, at least one meeting per month. They had to commit to at least one term, which we decided was going to be 6 months. So we're coming to the end of that right now. They had to attend our monthly board meeting, and they had to participate in 3 advocacy opportunities or events per term. We left that really broad on purpose, again, so that they could do what worked for them, whether that was a social media campaign or a letter writing or a panel or a meeting, whatever worked for them. We wanted them to be able to reach out the best way that they could. We meet with them monthly. We have a monthly board meeting, and we have really let them kind of drive. Melissa and I are just kind of there to say, okay, what's this look like, and how do you guys want to do this, and how can we support you? So they're driving the ship, and we're supporting them. We throw out whatever opportunities that we come across, and when they jump on, we support them in doing that. I think part of that is recognizing when we're working with students that have lived experience in the programs that we deal with, there's trauma attached to that, and we have to recognize that, and we have to be sensitive to that and flexible with the way that they are comfortable in participating. It doesn't always look the way it looks for adults, and it doesn't always maybe feel like the way we want it to feel, but participation from them is what we're looking for, and we have to listen when they say that. So sometimes that's in writing, and that works for them. And a lot of times, quite honestly, it's not with the camera on when we're on Zoom, and that's the way it goes, and that's okay. So yeah, that was kind of how we started our little youth advisory board.
And I just want to add on to what Christina's saying. We also pay them. So the reason we've had this dream in our heart for quite some time at CCOE, but we wanted to be able to have sustained payment for the youth who are participating. For us in foster youth services, we had some direct service dollars that we could draw down for 3 years. This was kind of one of the many options that we could do. We got creative with telling our CDE partners, hey, this is what we want to do. We want to involve youth in our advisory boards. We want to invite them to speak at different things. We want to invite them to create projects that they're passionate about. And so this is a limited time funding, but we know that we have guaranteed 3 years of funding for our youth advisory board. So we pay them for our monthly meetings. We pay them $50 to attend. We pay them for every advocacy opportunity that we have. We try to kind of scale it up. So for example, if we're speaking to a large group of people, right, we want to make that a little bit more monetarily, because we would pay a speaker, we would pay a adult colleague more to speak in front of a large group of people. That takes more time to prepare for. Maybe it takes clothes to get ready. All of those types of things, which is really important, because Christina and I both are strong believers that in absence of payment, we're not truly valuing our youth's time, right? They're taking, especially when we're working with system involved youth, oftentimes they are supporting themselves by themselves. So if we want them to dedicate an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, we want to be paying them for that. So that has been really important. We've also, like Christina said, gotten really creative about how we want to have youth engaged. We check in with them. We try to find opportunities for them. Right now, we're also working on kind of a longer term project that our board just kind of said, okay, we've been doing this for 6 months. We've got some training. We kind of understand what we're doing. And now this is what we want to do for our county. At the same time, we can plug them into boards when they're interested, when they're able, but they kind of have this larger vision that they've developed that we're just supporting or asking questions, being curious. Why is that important? What intrigues you about that? How can we make this work in our county? One of the great opportunities that we wanted to share was actually in partnership with Barb. Barb and I were on another committee for Calaveras County for a community survey that we were setting out. And, we were talking with our adult colleagues, and I just kind of threw it out there. Hey, I have some invested youth on our youth advisory board. I can throw this their way, see if they have feedback. What does everybody think? Everybody was on board. It was great. We sent it to them the same day because we happened to have a meeting, and they really thoughtfully gave feedback on our survey, on how we worded the questions, on what it looked like, what our opening paragraph was like, what the options were. And this is a 3-question survey, right? But to them, that was an opportunity for them to engage. So we got the feedback from them, wrote it down together, sent it over to Barb, and Barb did this really wonderful thing. She just said thank you to the Calaveras Youth Advisory Board for these excellent changes. We were able to implement all of the youth's changes, and our entire committee agreed to it. Now, the cool part is that when we shared that at our next advisory board meeting, the impact that that had on our youth advisory board members, even to me, was a little surprising. It was, wow, I thought no one was going to actually listen to me. I thought you were just asking that so we could check a box and say we heard from the youth. So something as simple as actually implementing and doing what we say we're going to do when we reach out to youth and take their advice and their thoughts seriously and implementing them, that is building up our next leaders in our community. That's building better programs. I think, I mean, Barb, you can correct me if I'm wrong too. I think it created a much better survey for us as well.
Right.
And the impact that had, I mean, we had a debriefing conversation in our group about it. How does that feel to hear from someone you haven't met, to say, thank you so much for your input? And it was emotional for them. I mean, we had oh, really, like exclamations. So it's things that, you know, when we as professionals, we might not think to share something as simple as an email, something as simple as a survey, but it matters to our youth. And it's small ways like that that we want to engage them, because that is the beauty of having a small community that we're invested in. You know, we as service providers are invested in the youth in our community, but they're also invested in us. They're invested in their community as well. And that's one of the beautiful things about living in a rural county. We have this opportunity to really engage with the youth that we have. It has its challenges for sure, some practical ones. We don't make them drive anywhere because we don't have buses and public transportation. We do everything virtually. We give them options for how they're joining virtually. Like Christina said, cameras on are not a requirement. If you want to participate with a camera off, that's okay. So yeah, so we try to be very flexible. We have that genuine care, those genuine relationships that we've built for some of them years before they were able to serve. And we're also recognizing that we're building up their skills as leaders and as adults. And, you know, we have one of our young ladies today who chose to write in her answers, right, for some of our questions, which I don't know, Christina, if you would like to share those as well. But that's what we are talking about when we're talking about being flexible, being accessible, for our youth to engage in a way that they feel comfortable saying, hey, this is how I can engage. A whole meeting full of adults on Zoom seems really scary right now, but I can write my answers down and share those because I still know my voice is valuable. So yeah.
Well, I think a big piece of that too is simply building their confidence that we're not just asking you to ask you, like people are listening and you matter. And the more little times that happens, the more their confidence builds just in life, right? And people listening to them and saying, you know what, I do have something to say and it's valuable. And that's another reason we were very intentional about letting them know we are paying you because your time is valuable, and we would pay any adult. So why would we not pay you for your time? Because your time is just as valuable as mine. And we want to honor that. That's why we're doing this. We're not doing this just because somebody said we had to, or we're doing this because it's the right thing to do and because you're valuable and your time is valuable. And end of sentence, right? Like period. And that in itself builds that confidence, right? Like I'm a member of our youth advisory board. It matters. It matters.
Absolutely. Thank you. So before Christina goes ahead and reads from our youth person, I just wanted to share with the participants still on the call. We are going to open this up to you for questions, and we hope that you feel free to either raise your hand, unmute yourself, chat. You don't have to ask us to unmute you. you can do that yourself. So you just feel free if you want to speak. We hope you'll ask questions and also share some of your experiences that you may have had. A few slides up, we'll have some questions that we thought of, but we really want to hear from folks in the audience. But Christina, if you would be kind enough, that'd be great if we could hear from Serena.
Sure. So our young lady is 17. She will be starting at our local community college here shortly. She's a former foster youth. And the questions that we gave her, the first question was, how did you make the choice to become engaged in community leadership efforts? And her answer is, I would like to lead a good example as a leader rather than a follower. I'd also like to have the opportunity to be able to build trust, communication, and understanding as a leader to those around me, hopefully inspiring others along the way to maybe do the same someday. For her, it's really important to set an example, because I think she didn't have a lot of those around, and she's got a younger sister that I think she is trying really hard to break the cycle for and set an example for. So that part of her community engagement is prompted by that. The second question is, how has it enhanced your personal life? How do you see it improving services for youth? She said, it has enhanced my personal life by building phenomenal relationships with my peers. By being a leader in this type of community who has possibly gone through similar experiences as these youth, I feel like it gives them a voice and comfortable space to be able to freely and openly talk about things that they may not feel comfortable sharing elsewhere. The last question we asked her was, what mistakes should be avoided? What can we do to encourage youth to participate? Being kind, open, and honest is a great first step to encouraging youth to participate. When youth feel they are in a safe environment, talking to good people, it makes youth feel more comfortable and prone to be open on the idea of participating. Avoid coming on too strong with the idea of participating. It may cause pressure. So just to kind of give you a little background, she wanted to be here today, right? We had some conversations about it. We had some talk about it. We had given her the questions. But she's a young lady and she's got a lot going on in her life right now. She's independent. She's, her car broke down. There's all kinds of things happening. And we again let her participate the way that she could participate, because this is not the first thing on her mind today. She's got a lot of other things on her mind. She's starting college next week, which is a very big deal. So it's being open to letting her participate in the way that she works. So those are her words.
Thank you. And once again, telling these stories really allows us to connect among each other. As Melissa mentioned, there's just a lot of similarities of my experience of working with youth in Glen as for you in Calaveras, because we're working with a population that we need to understand about having tact and skill and being able to be sensitive and to also be patient. Just like as you mentioned, we expect we expect things from adults because we expect that they're able to, have these conversations and be able to attend these meetings and be able to get there. But the reality is, when working with youth, you have to create a process or a system that allows them to feel safe. And, also because we don't know the traumas that they have been experienced in their past. So we need to be sensitive to be able to hear their story and be able to give them the time to feel comfortable. And so I really appreciate you both sharing the story of how you've developed these relationships. I applaud you. We learned through this process, obviously, that we may have youth that may initially be interested, but then things happen and they're just not feeling comfortable. And Christine, I just really appreciate you working with Serena and being able to ask her for her permission to be able to share this story or her answers. And that shows a lot of respect. And that's what youth really need. That consistency I was talking about is the relationship is not one way, but it's a two-way street. So thank you so much, both of you, for sharing the story. So we want to open it up now to the rest of our partners here today. If you have any questions, as Barbara mentioned, or if there is, or if you would like to ask, unmute yourself, or if you would like to raise your hand, we will, call your name out. Or if you would like to just post a question on the chat box, feel free. We want to open it up as a dialogue, a discussion. This is the point of having a learning series. We have also created some questions for our panel members, but we want to give it a second. If there are any questions, let me just check really quick. Want to make sure we hear from you. Or is there someone that would like to share any similarities or any questions or maybe examples that you would like to share from your county? Do we have anyone?
Don't be shy.
This is the opportunity. We want to hear from you. I know that you, as I mentioned, you have a gift, and we want to see if you would share that with us today. Kathy, I see you have unmuted yourself.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you very much for having this presentation. And I love the fact that this is all asset based. So this is fantastic. I'm a part of the Institute as well. One of the trainings that I find that helps people of all ages is something called the Right Question Project. Luz Santana. It's really a way to get micro democracy. Teaches people to think in questions, so you don't necessarily have the answers. She has a website. I think it's called rightquestionproject.org. Anyways, that is a really great training for folks of all ages when you have a concern and you can brainstorm questions around your concern. So that was one I just wanted to share.
That's great. And I wanted to just mention, when I send out the email, I'll make sure to include these resources along with the California Youth Connection. We did try to see if we could get somebody from that organization to participate as well, but they weren't available. But that's a great organization to help build youth leadership as well. So we'll make sure to include those in.
Yes, and you could become a mentor for our youth, and maybe you have community members that are interested in, being a mentor, being part of giving back to their community. So you can engage community residents. We actually had a lot of our volunteers that were residents were newly retired, or they were retired and they were looking for something to give back. And it was such a beautiful, I just share really quick, to see the two generations. We had senior and we had a youth come together. It was such a beautiful journey to see how the youth really ignited the senior, and then the senior gave their story, their knowledge to this youth, and became that parent, that relationship. It was just a beautiful connection that happened. So yes, California Youth Connection, perfect resource for your community if you don't have it. So all right, okay, so I don't see any questions in the chat box, so let's go ahead and ask our panel members. So we have our first question for you. What does the youth voice look like? I know you shared a little bit about that, but any special trainings that you maybe utilize, or that you can share with us that help youth use their voice effectively? I know we talked about CYC, but is there other ones other than your council that you incorporated?
Yeah, that's a great question, and actually something that we meant to mention and forgot. So perfect timing. We actually hooked in our launch of our youth advisory board to a foster youth education conference that had a youth track. So what was really great about that was we were able to take all but one of our members down. It was also in Monterey, which was great. And they had an entire track dedicated to helping youth find their voice to advocate for themselves. Now it kind of ebbed and flowed, right? When we're bringing youth to things like this, we still have to keep in mind all of those things that Christina mentioned, that sometimes there's a lot going on. We had one of our participants who just couldn't do it the first day. And it was a very intense kind of 6-hour straight, no breaks, youth diving into it with each other, and it was too much. And we got flexible with her. I mean, what we ended up doing was just taking her out to dinner, just her, because we, as adults, we didn't have anything scheduled on our plate. But what was great about that was it allowed her to really believe it's okay. It's okay for me to participate as I am, who I am. And we were not mad, we weren't upset. You know, if anything, we just got to have a heart to heart of, you matter, your voice matters, and we want you to participate as you feel comfortable. And, you know, everybody in a conference setting had those ups and downs, right? Where it's like, oh, it's too much, it's too long, I need a break, and just responding to that. But I think kind of having that sort of a setting where we can invest in regular professional development. I know our cohort right now, and kind of the programs that I mentioned, pretty much every conference that I need to go to as a professional now has a youth track. And we're really looking to encouraging our youth advisory board members to come to that, to come to conferences, to get professional development, and then to check in with them of what do they need. We talked about, would you guys like to have somebody come out and speak who has former lived experience and speak about, you know, how they've navigated different things? And they were like, nah, not interested. So not to overwhelm them with training, but give those give our youth the fun opportunities for, we're going to a conference, it's going to be great. We're going to have a fun time, and you're going to learn your skills. Anything else, Christina, that I might have been missing in there?
No, I think it was a really, I think that's part of the trick too, is, you know, there's got to be something in it that's fun, right? Like our conference was in Monterey, and we made sure that we went to the beach. I mean, it doesn't have to be a big thing, but I mean, I want to have fun when I go to that kind of stuff. And I think it's important that we acknowledge that they're young people and they want to have fun too, right? Like, so it always remembering that I think is important too.
And you know what, I was just going to share that one of the things that I forgot to mention early on is, for those folks that didn't attend part 1, we had the Center for the Study of Social Policy share on their Youth Thrive program, and they have a phenomenal resources on youth engagement on their website. So this cssp.org, Center for the Study of Social Policy. We'll also include that in our follow-up email, but they have great resources. Go ahead, Lucy.
And you can follow us on our YouTube channel too. So feel free to visit us on our YouTube channel. You can see all our previous sessions.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Excellent.
We have one question in our chat box for our panel members, and the question is coming from Pat. Her question is, she is working on building youth representation within a youth substance abuse / misuse prevention coalition, and wonders how you navigated all those inconsistencies regarding attendance, life issues, etc.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's something that, to be honest, is a struggle. I think particularly when we're working with vulnerable populations, right? It's a little bit of a larger struggle, but it's also statewide. After COVID, that participation and consistent participation in youth is low. So one of the things that we kind of touched on earlier is, we have a contract with our youth that's 6 months. So they are literally contracted employees for us. And it outlines our expectations really clearly. Christina kind of mentioned what those were, but one of them is that you have to attend our monthly meeting. You have to be engaged in our programs. How we've kind of navigated that in the past, because, you know, we had one of our young men who had some health issues, and he couldn't make one of our board meetings. So we said, hey, let's do a makeup session. and let's engage with you there. Is it more time on the staff end? Yes, but it matters, and to have that consistent engagement for them to say it is okay if I can't make this meeting and my voice can still be incorporated, with the expectation like, yes, we want you to be at every youth advisory board meeting, but we do understand that life happens, and having that genuine compassion. And sometimes it can be frustrating, but we are such a small piece of the puzzle of their lives, and it's still worth it for them to come to the table. So that has been one way that we've just, again, we have those relationships with them. We communicate expectations ahead of time, and this is what we're expecting. And then if things go wrong, we talk about it and we have an open dialogue. And we're learning too. I would always err on the side of giving them grace, giving them compassion, and inviting them back to the table if they miss a meeting, if they, have difficulty engaging, because it's hard. It's hard. So as long as you have that buy-in and that relationship and that open line of communication, I think that flexibility is key. Anything else you want to add with that, Christina?
I think it's also fully engaging with those that do show up, right? It's saying, okay, we don't have everybody, but we're going to do exactly what we would have done with 2 people as we would have done with 6 people, because the 2 of you matter, and we're going to keep doing this. We're going to build the 2 of you, and then we'll bring everybody else along. But I don't want the ones that do show up to feel like they've wasted their time or they're not important because everybody didn't show up. We'll catch everybody up later, and that's okay.
That is, oh my gosh, that is so amazing that you're talking about that, because there's this rejection feeling for the 2 that showed up, that they were not good enough. And I just love that you are utilizing this as a strength to say, you showed up, we honor you, we value you, and we're going to move forward. That is excellent. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I agree, because it is about building, right? I also wanted to make sure folks, thank you for the folks that have to pop off. I get it, but this is I love this chat from Lisbeth Ray saying that she works at the Child Abuse Prevention Center, nonprofit preventing child abuse. She also is a healer, sound healer, and focus on self-love and self-care. And she's hosting meditation workshop specifically for teens in the Juvenile Probation Center in Madera County. That's so great. And they meditate, grounding sessions with art, and just how the kids feel afterwards that she's sharing. That's fantastic.
And Kathy LeBlanc is sharing a resource for the group, and that is
Yes.
that ABCD. If you are not familiar with it, it's the asset building, community development training. It's really about asset mapping for all ages, but definitely can be incorporated for youth specifically. So something to check out as a resource as well, if you're looking into some tools that can once again look at building our youth in a strength-based manner. And then I think we don't have any other questions, but thank you. Oh, here we go. But thank you also, Elizabeth. That's excellent. Being able to have that art studio to do that with our youth. So, all right. So I think I'm looking at the time, Barbara.
Yes. Should we move on? We'll move on to our last activity.
Yeah. So
thank you, Melissa. Yeah,
Melissa.
thank you. Beautiful job. And thank you for everything you're doing. It's wonderful. So last meeting, for those of you who were here, we started working in this activity called TRIZ, which I have no idea what it stands for, but it's from the Community Engagement Toolkit. And this is really about looking at your efforts locally to engage in community, to engage folks, whether it be parents, youth, etc. Today, of course, we're specifically looking at youth. So what we're going to do is we're going to divide ourselves up. We have 21 folks left, which is perfect. We are going to divide into 4 groups, and we have a Jamboard. If Bryn would be kind enough to put the Jamboard link in the chat. And if you would be, if you take a moment and click on that link, It will open up a Jamboard, and we're going to go into 4 groups, and each group will have 3 Jamboards. 1, 2, 3 for group 1, 3, 4, 5 for group 2. Anyway, they're marked, so you'll be able to see them. So just keep an eye out for what group number you're in, 1, 2, 3, or 4, and try to find the Jamboard for that group. And we'll all go into facilitate your meeting. But what we wanted you to do is take like 5 minutes for each step. Step 1, step 2, step 3. We'll come back together about 11:25. And step 1 you may have done before if you were at our last meeting. We looked at, imagine the worst possible youth engagement effort you could undertake. And like one example would be, my scheduling a meeting when school just started. That's an example of something bad that you would do. So take about 5 minutes to list those in the Jamboard, then go to the next Jamboard in your group number. And step 2, we want you to look at what youth engagement efforts you've already undertaken or you're thinking about undertaking. Are there any elements from step 1 that might be in your current or planned or past youth engagement efforts? So again, we're thinking about what have we done currently that falls under some of the worst possible things we could have done. And then step 3, we want you to look at all those failure elements that you've experienced and what could you design into your new efforts to avoid those failures. So for example, for me, step 1 would be, I scheduled this during the second week of school for kids. Step 2 would be scheduling, poor scheduling. Step 3 would be, how can you make sure that you schedule things that make it easy for youth to participate? And what are some of the things you would do? So if folks don't have any questions, feel free to chat any if you do.
And Barb, if I can interrupt for just a moment. So the other interpreter, myself, Renee, if we can be put in the same group, and if
Perfect.
anyone who is deaf who wants to identify themselves in the chat, making sure that we're all in the same group together instead of being split up.
Okay, well, what we can do is put you in group 1. How's that?
Okay.
Okay, so you'll be in group 1. Anybody who needs ASL interpretation, please make sure you select group 1. Okay.
Or you won't be able to self-select, but
Oh,
please
that's right.
message me. You can do it privately, and I will move you into group 1.
Thank you very much, Bryn. Thanks for the reminder. Okay, so let's go into the rooms. Thank you, Kathy, for your participation. And then what we're going to do is we'll let you know when it's when you've got about 2 minutes left in the group. And if Melissa and Christina also want to join, you'd be great.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. Great job. I just want to share with you one last thing before, and then I'll let Lucy take us home. I will print out the PDF of the Jamboards and send it to you all so you can see what the other groups said and hopefully learn from them as well. And I just want to thank you all for your participation and your wonderful thoughts. And don't forget to do the evaluation. This may be the last learning exchange, but it won't be our last time together as a team. And thank you to our wonderful presenters.
Yes, thank you, everyone. Thank you for your time. I know everyone is very busy, but I know that this is a topic that is so important for the work we do in building our new leadership, right? Our youth are basically our new leaders, and they're going to make so many changes in our community, in our world. I want to say thank you for your input in our activity. I know that sometimes some of this work, we have to be vulnerable and share some of the issues that are not working. So thank you for being open. And we hope that Barbara and I and Bryn have brought some new tools and strategies in this cohort period being together. We just feel blessed to be part of this journey with you. And we just want to thank you for the incredible work you do in our community. It is not easy. We know that, but just one thing we do want you to remember is these sessions were created to fill your cup, to be able to give you tools for your toolbox. So if there's anything you can take away is fill your toolbox with some critical strategies that you can incorporate, and also create your network. So hopefully you have connected with other entities, other agencies, and you can learn from our panel presenters. They're also a resource to you. They're building a wider network for you. So with that, we want to say thank you, and we really value your input. So we ask kindly to please, if you could please take a moment to complete the evaluation. Your feedback is important to the work we do. We don't know if this is making a difference. We want to make an impact and utilize your time, to the best we can. So even though it is our last cohort as a rural county learning exchange, we just want to say thank you. It has been wonderful to work with you and get to know you and learn about the great work you do. Our panel presenters have become like a family to us. We want to thank them. Melissa, Christina, thank you for all the great work you do in Calaveras County. They're very blessed to have you. And we want to say thank you to each of you for sharing your insight, your input during this process. So with that, we just want to say, Barbara and I, we are signing off, but not for a long time. So we will see you soon. And please don't forget, join us at our strategies website, which is www.strategiesca.org. Sign up for our upcoming webinars, learning series that we'll be offering. Also, check us out on our YouTube channel, follow us, subscribe, and you'll see a lot of our work being posted. Once again, if you need help at your county to complete your prevention plan, please reach out. We are here for you. We are funded specifically to support your county. So with that, thank you. It's been a wonderful journey, and keep doing the great work you do.
Thank you, Melissa and Christine.